That's all right.
But it was written about extensively.
There's a lot of research on the effect of extended unemployment benefits more generally. I think there's a fair amount of consensus in the economics profession that there are trade-offs involved, that particularly if you look at normal times when we're close to full employment, that higher benefits or extended benefits do have some effect on search activity. That effect is greatly reduced now when we have over 4 job seekers for every vacancy. The effect of any individual perhaps taking more time to find a job that's suitable for him or her is going to have less effect when there are other job seekers available for those positions. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, another effect of unemployment benefits is that it provides critical income support for families when they're going through a very difficult time. I mentioned earlier that the unemployed tend to have a high marginal propensity to spend out of the benefits that they receive to pay for their mortgages, and that helps to prevent foreclosures and pay for food and so on, which supports the economy more generally. The CBO, when it looked at this and weighed these different factors, came to the conclusion, which I think is a sensible conclusion, that extending unemployment benefits provides the biggest bang for the buck in terms of strengthening consumption in the economy and creating jobs, taking all of those factors into account.
Laura.
Thank you. I want to follow up on Jake's question, which was whether the White House would accept a payroll tax cut or the UI extension without it being paid for. You mentioned that the president had a proposal and that the Senate Democrats have a proposal and that they're both make sense. But I think what I'd like to know is whether it would be okay to do it without either one of those, and just would that be one acceptable outcome given the economics involved?
You know, I don't want to go into what might happen when the Senate still hasn't voted on the bill that Senator Casey has proposed. They're going to vote on that later this week. I can tell you that from my perspective, and I believe from the administration's perspective, doing this in a way that makes economic sense is the way to proceed. And I'm sure that the president would consider whether it's a sensible economic strategy going forward. But I think it's first important that the Senate consider and the legislation that's before it, which does pay for this with the way that the Senate Democrats have proposed.
And some would say that it makes economic sense to, in a recession, to have some upfront spending, even if it does increase the deficit long term. Would you agree with that?
You know, I would need to look at what the proposals are and you know, wait until that point. But hopefully Jay can have me back.
Yeah, I'll definitely have you back.
Frankly, that was what I mean. So you don't have,
Well, we're not
in a
gonna-
perfect world, you don't. I mean, does it make sense in this economy to actually find a pay for this?
You know, I don't want to go into specifics about what kind of finding a pay for. Some pay forwards make sense, some don't. All I can tell you is I think at this point the right fiscal path for the country is to try to support the economy in the short run, and to do it in a fiscally responsible way, which is over a period, you know, of say a 10-year window, which is common, to have it be paid for. That's what the president has proposed.
Okay, let's just do okay.
You're open to not paying for it.
Again, let me just take it. I think I've gotten this. Alan's now gotten it 3 times. We're not going to speculate about what might happen if Senate Republicans do not hear the call of the vast majority of the American people to vote in favor of extending and expanding the payroll tax cut and paying for it in a way that is entirely economically responsible and broadly supported by the American people, Americans of all political persuasion. So that vote hasn't happened yet. We certainly hope that enough senators vote for it that it will then move to the House, pass there, and be signed into law by the president. It would certainly be nice if a simple majority of senators were allowed to vote on this, pass it, and send it to the president, send it to the House and the president's desk. We certainly know that a vast majority of the American people support it. So we're not going to speculate about end games if certain things do or don't happen in the Senate. I got a couple more for Alan because I have a hard out for me.
Knew there was a reason you wanted me.
Yeah.
Can I ask you about the national debt? It topped $15 trillion a couple of weeks ago, and it's now bearing down on 100% of GDP. Does that worry you?
I think it's very important that we get on a sustainable fiscal path. I think it's also important we measure the debt in the right way, looking at net debt held by the public. But hold that aside. The president's proposed in September gave a proposal to the Super Committee or Joint Committee of Congress to help put us on a fiscally sustainable path. And I think that as we strengthen the economy in the short run, we need to do two things at once. We need to strengthen the economy in the short run, and we need to return to a fiscally sustainable path.
If Congress just extends it at the 2%, will that lower the unemployment rate next year?
I think if you look at independent estimates from across the spectrum, they would predict that extending the payroll tax cut or expanding it would lead to stronger economic growth and more employment than would otherwise be the case.
But just the extension, just at 2%, that would lower the unemployment rate.
I think that would create more jobs compared to the situation if it's not extended.
What would that do to the actual rate? I'm sorry.
If you compare it to what the unemployment rate would be if it were not extended, I think because we would have more job growth by extending it, all else equal, it would lead to lower unemployment rate. But the important thing is to compare it to, how does it affect economic growth, how does it affect job growth compared to extending it versus not extending it.
Let me do one more, Julia.
Yeah, to follow on that then, would the White House consider, regardless of the pay for, simply extending the payroll tax cut without an expansion? I haven't heard that.
I'm going to rewind what Jay said.
Yeah.
The Senate is considering a bill later this week which has a way to pay for it. The president proposed a way to pay for it. And we're open to economically sensible ways of trying to strengthen the economy and do it in a fiscally responsible way.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you all. I will now let Alan get back to his economic work, and we'll take your questions on other issues. I regrettably have to leave here in about 15 minutes. Before I take questions, I just wanted to note, as I'm sure all of you saw, that the Vice President landed in Baghdad earlier today on a visit, I think his 8th as Vice President, and an even higher number since he was a senator, or in the last 8 or 10 years. I just want to note that President Obama, when he was running for this office, made clear that if elected, he would end the war in Iraq responsibly. What we're seeing happen in these final 6 weeks of the year is the fulfillment of that promise, where we are withdrawing the remaining U.S. forces from Iraq, and we are ending that war responsibly and giving the Iraqi people the chance for a better future that they deserve, and also maintaining an important strategic relationship with Iraq. I would note that, having, as you know, worked for the Vice President during his first 2 years here, that it was a measure of the President's seriousness about Iraq and seriousness about fulfilling his commitment that he asked the Vice President to take on day-to-day management of this policy, which is why he has traveled, as you know, so often to Iraq over the last nearly 3 years. And with that, I will take your questions. Jake.
I've heard from a lot of Democrats in the last few weeks who are concerned about President Obama possibly granting an exemption to Catholic churches, hospitals, and universities from the requirement that all insurance plans cover contraception. I'm wondering if you could shed any light on this decision. I know the President has not yet made a decision, but I think these Democrats, a lot of them in the abortion rights community, are concerned that this is even being discussed. Could you explain why the President is considering an exemption and what's going into his decision-making?
Well, part of the process, Jake, as you know, was seeking and receiving public input before the guidelines that were announced by the Secretary of Health and Human Services would go into effect. That process did result in public input, and as well as resulted in numerous comments from various folks who have concerns with this, about this issue. The President has, this decision has not yet been made, but you can be sure that we want to strike the right balance between expanding coverage of preventive services and respecting religious beliefs, and that's the balance that will be sought as this decision is made. Ben?
Believe it or not, I had a quick follow-up on the payroll tax.
Sure.
I know you don't want to comment about a Senate vote that hasn't happened yet, and I'm not asking about that. I understand your point on that. What I'm asking is about the president's point when he unveiled the payroll tax idea in the September speech. He said then that every idea in his plan will be paid for, and he has said it maybe dozens of times since then. I'm just wondering if he stands by that he has proposals, including this payroll tax extension. He wants the Congress to pass them, and he wants them to be paid for.
I will repeat what Alan said and add a little bit to it. As you noted, in September, the President put forward a comprehensive proposal, the American Jobs Act, that included within it the extension and expansion of the payroll tax cut for 160 million Americans. A tax cut that goes right to hardworking middle-class Americans, a tax cut that has given this year an average of $1,000 extra in the average family's wallet, and would, if expanded next year, result in a $1,500 tax cut. That's very important for those families to help them make ends meet as we continue to emerge from the worst recession in our lifetime since the Great Depression. And it's important for the economy because, as Alan noted earlier, the payroll tax cut is widely viewed by economists, independent economists and forecasters, to have a very positive impact on economic growth and job creation. The President believes that the best way to do this is the way that he put forward, with the pay-for that he put forward. He also believes that the pay-for the Senate Democrats have put forward meets the principles that he laid out, and he looks forward to the Senate voting on the proposal that Senator Casey has put forward later this week. It's the responsible thing to do, and as I think I noted the other day, if only Senate Republicans who say they will vote against this express as much passion about the need to cut taxes for the middle class as they express to protect tax cuts and protect the incomes of millionaires and billionaires, we might be able to get this done without much hullabaloo. I mean, this, after all, is anyone here surprised that we're in a debate with Republicans about whether or not to cut taxes is the right thing to do for the middle class? I thought there were 4 tax cuts. The President has put forward this tax cut and expanding it for the middle class for 160 million working Americans. And we'll have a vote on that later this week, and what you all are telling me is that Republicans are going to vote against it. They have to explain that. And the reason they're going to vote against it, they say so far, is because they don't want it to be paid for in a way that the vast majority of Americans support, that asks millionaires and billionaires to pay a little bit extra. Millionaires and billionaires who, as you know, based on the CBO study and many others, have done exceptionally well, have seen their slice of the American pie grow as the middle class has been squeezed. So we certainly hope that Senate Republicans will hear the call of their constituents, reconsider their vote later this week, and pass this with more than 60 votes and send it to the House.
Nothing you just said responds to Ben's question, which was, does he still stand by his statement?
The President, that is the President's preferred choice. You're asking me to, if only it were the case that what this President wanted, he got in whole and in full. And certainly that's what we would ask of the Senate, that they would pass the American Jobs Act in its entirety as written by the President, proposed by the President. Unfortunately, thus far, this has not happened. We have had one modest but important success working with the Congress on one element of the Jobs Act, and that was the assistance to veterans, to hiring veterans. We hope that Congress will act on the payroll tax cut and expansion. I'm not going to speculate about what Congress might do, and as Alan said, what pay-fors they might come up with if they vote this down, this very responsible provision or proposal that will come forward in the Senate later this week.
You can't say whether the President would sign a bill that is paid
I'm not
for or
going to. We don't know what the end game is yet, and there is no value in this process, or ultimately for the American people who want and deserve this tax cut, to negotiate an end game here before we've even had a vote. So I'm not going to go any further on that. Ed?
You do it all the time. You put out veto threats.
Well, I don't have a bill. The bill that Ben is talking about and others have now asked on